I made a friend at college, not knowing he was actually the secret brother my parents had abandoned years ago. And when I suggested confronting them together, he shocked me by taking an unexpected and drastic step that changed everything I knew about my family. I thought the crippling social anxiety that made my life a living hell was the worst thing I'd ever face. But then, a friend ghosted me, and that devastating betrayal ripped open a family secret so dark, it made me question everything I thought I knew about my own mother. When I was 18, my social anxiety wasn't just bad, it was a monster. We're talking full-blown, can't make eye contact with a stranger without wanting to cry kind of anxiety. If I ever felt like I said the wrong thing, these overwhelmingly loud, intrusive thoughts would scream, "Go kill yourself," in my head. And yeah, I had every intention of staying alive, but the sheer force of those thoughts was terrifying. So starting college? Imagine being a newborn baby and then, bam, thrown off a cliff. That's how I felt. Just walking through campus, surrounded by a sea of unfamiliar faces, would send me spiraling into a harrowing internal monologue of self-doubt and fear. But then, something shifted. The first week was pure hell, but after that, I actually talked to someone. Well, he talked at me. I mostly just nodded or grunted, true to my high school weird kid reputation. But this guy, Blake, he was my first real friend. I latched on to him. He was kind, funny, and for the first time in a long time, I never once felt judged. After a month of our weird, one-sided conversations, we finally started actually talking. It felt like he just got me, like we were two pieces of a puzzle, but I should have known it was too good to be true, because somehow we had an eerily similar early life. I'm talking the exact same restaurants in the same area, the same kindergarten, and even our babysitters had the same name. It was mind-boggling. And the very next day after this insane realization, he ghosted me, blocked me on everything, vanished. For someone with social anxiety, that's literally your worst nightmare come true. It confirmed every single insecurity I had. The worst part? We were in the same course. So when he stopped coming to college, I noticed immediately. My mind immediately jumped to the absolute darkest conclusion. I honestly thought he'd taken his own life or something. That same weekend, I went home, desperate. My mom always knew what to say, so I finally opened up to her, showing her a photo of me and Blake. Her face went completely, utterly white. Not a shade of concern for me, but pure, unadulterated terror. "Don't ever talk to him again," she spat. "What do you mean?" I stammered, confused. She interrupted me, her voice sharp. "Make new friends, or don't. Up to you. Just never speak to him again and don't even think about telling your father." Then she stormed off into her room, leaving me standing there in complete shock. Up until that point, my anxiety had convinced me the entire thing was my fault. I assumed I must have been so weird and annoying that he had no choice but to drop out. But apparently, that wasn't the case. And I knew exactly who to call. The person I trusted more than anyone, the smartest woman I knew, the only woman who truly knew me, my old babysitter. She picked up straight away. I asked her if she remembered babysitting for anyone else around my age. There was a long, heavy pause on the other end. Then a meek, yes. I smiled, a flicker of hope. "Do you know a Blake Thompson, the guy from my college?" she asked. "Do you trust me?" "Yes," I practically shouted. "Good," she said, and then without another word, she hung up. She asked me to meet her at the Burger King a block away. And what she told me there? It didn't just turn my life upside down. It completely obliterated it. A long time ago, before I was even born, my parents had an open marriage. Everything was fine, just cruising along, until my mom, she got pregnant by her very wealthy boss. My parents, her husband and her, decided to raise the kid. They figured with the child support, it would just be an extra source of income. My eyes were completely wide, heart pounding, but she kept going. They raised my half-brother for 7 years. But then the original father, her boss, refused to keep paying child support. So they just gave him up for adoption. Everything clicked. Everything made a horrifying, sickening kind of sense. I promised my babysitter I wouldn't tell anyone. As soon as she finished, she just got in her car and left me there in Burger King to process everything. I swear, in that moment, I felt every single emotion known to man: anger, betrayal, heartbreak, grief, pure gut-wrenching despair. But before I could even think about taking action, I knew I had to find Blake, or James, as he was truly known. I pulled out my phone and laptop right there in the booth. If he didn't want to be found, I'd have to get creative. First stop, the university directory. Blake Thompson wasn't listed, which was weird because I'd definitely seen him there before. Social media searches yielded nothing. It was like he'd completely vanished. Then it hit me. What if Blake Thompson wasn't even his real name? What if it was just the name he used at school? I racked my brain, thinking back to our conversations. Had he ever mentioned anything about being adopted or a different last name? Wait. There was something. He'd mentioned his adoptive parents moved around a lot. 3 different high schools. The last one was somewhere upstate. Millbrook High. I found the Millbrook High website and started digging through their online yearbooks. It took almost an hour of frantic searching, but finally, in the junior class section of a yearbook from 2 years ago, I found him. Except the caption under his photo didn't say Blake Thompson. It said James Walker. James Walker. My half-brother had been living under a fake name. I sat there in that Burger King booth, staring at his yearbook photo until some employee asked if I was okay. I wasn't, not even close. But I mumbled something about being fine and ordered another coffee, just to justify taking up space. Needed a game plan. Blake. James. Whatever his name was, he clearly knew who I was when he approached me. This wasn't some cosmic coincidence. He deliberately sought me out, befriended me, then ghosted when things got too real. The question was why? I started digging deeper. Social media was a dead end for his current accounts, but I discovered he hadn't deleted everything. The Millbrook yearbook listed clubs and activities. James Walker had been on the debate team and the school newspaper. There was a group photo of the newspaper staff, and I zoomed in as much as my crappy phone would allow. In the corner, a girl had her arm around Blake, James, both of them making goofy faces. The caption listed her as Zoe Hernandez, editor-in-chief. I quickly searched for her on Instagram and hit pay dirt. Not only was her account public, but she had several photos with Blake James from their high school days. In her most recent posts, she mentioned attending Bridgewater Community College, about 40 minutes from my university. I shot her a DM right there in Burger King. Kept it casual. Just said I was an old friend of James trying to reconnect. Lost his contact info after he changed numbers. I didn't expect a quick response, but my phone pinged less than 5 minutes later. James doesn't really keep in touch with people from Millbrook, she wrote. I only hear from him like once a month now. My heart raced. She was still in contact. With him, I typed back quickly, trying to sound normal and not like a desperate stalker. Yeah, he's always been kind of private. We actually met up at college recently, but I lost his new number. Any chance you could help me out? She didn't respond for almost an hour. I ordered a burger and fries while I waited, barely tasting anything. Finally, my phone lit up again. Sorry, but James is pretty specific about who gets his contact info these days. Had some family drama? Who did you say you were again? I stared at her message, trying to decide how much to reveal. The truth seemed way too complicated for a DM. I went with, we knew each other from Antonio's Pizza growing up. It's really important I talk to him. Family stuff. No response after that. I finished my cold fries and headed back to my parents' house, my mind spinning with what to do next. I felt like I was in some bizarre TV drama, except there was no script telling me my next move. When I got home, the house was empty. My parents had left a note saying they were at dinner with friends and wouldn't be back until late. Good. I needed time to think without their lies hanging in the air between us. I flopped onto my bed and stared at the ceiling. The same ceiling I'd stared at for 18 years, never knowing I had a brother who'd once lived in this very house. Had this been his room? Had he stared at this same ceiling, thinking his own thoughts, before my parents erased him from our lives? My phone buzzed. Unknown number. The text just said, "This is James." Zoe says you're looking for me. What do you want? My fingers trembled as I typed back. I know everything. About us being half-brothers. About what our parents did. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, meet me tomorrow, 2 p.m., the coffee shop behind the science building. Come alone. I barely slept that night. My parents came home late, and I pretended to be asleep when my mom checked on me. The next morning, I made up some excuse about needing to get back to campus early for a study group. My mom seemed relieved I wasn't asking more questions about Blake. The drive back to campus took forever. I kept rehearsing what I'd say to Blake or James when I saw him. Should I apologize? But for what? None of this was my fault. I was as much a victim of my parents' lies as he was. Maybe more so since he'd at least known something. I got to the coffee shop at 1:30, ordered the strongest thing on the menu, and grabbed a table in the back corner. Every time the door opened, my heart jumped into my throat. At exactly 2:00, he walked in. He looked different somehow. His hair was shorter, and he wasn't wearing his usual college hoodie and jeans, but a button-up shirt and khakis, like he'd come from somewhere professional. He spotted me immediately and walked over, not smiling. Tommy, he said, sitting down across from me. It felt weird hearing him say my name now, knowing everything I knew. James, I replied, testing out his real name. He flinched slightly. So, you really did your homework? It wasn't hard, I shot back. Why'd you ghost me? And why'd you approach me in the first place if you were just going to disappear? He sighed, rubbing his face with both hands. It's complicated. I didn't plan on becoming your friend. I just wanted to see you up close. To understand. Understand what? I asked, a bitter edge to my voice. Why they kept you and not me. The bluntness of his statement hit me like a truck. I had no answer. There was nothing I could say that wouldn't sound hollow or defensive. James continued. I found out I was adopted when I was 12. My adoptive parents are good people. They told me everything they knew, which wasn't much. Just that my biological parents were a married couple who couldn't afford to keep me. When I turned 18, I got access to my adoption records, learned my biological mother's name, found her on Facebook. He laughed, a short, bitter sound. That's when I saw the photos of her perfect little family with you. I didn't know you existed until last weekend, I said weakly. Yeah, he said. I figured that out pretty quick when we started talking. You weren't faking your reaction to all those coincidences we had. He made air quotes around coincidences. Is that why you approached me? To mess with me? He shook his head. Originally, yeah. I transferred to your college specifically, to find you. I had this whole plan to befriend you, then reveal everything dramatically, make you feel as messed up as I did when I found out. So what changed? You did. Or rather, getting to know you did. James looked down at the table. I had all these preconceptions about you. I thought you'd be this entitled, spoiled golden child, the kid they chose to keep. But you weren't anything like that. You were this nervous wreck with crippling anxiety. You seemed, I don't know, damaged in your own way. As I spent time with you, I started feeling protective rather than resentful. It felt wrong to deliberately hurt someone who was already struggling. So, you just disappeared instead? I panicked. When you started connecting the dots about our childhoods, I realized I couldn't go through with my plan, but I also couldn't keep pretending. So I ran. We sat in silence for a moment. I had a million questions but didn't know where to start. Finally, I asked, what was it like living with them? His face darkened. You really want to know? I nodded. Your dad, our dad, was never around much, always working or working. Your mom was inconsistent, sometimes super attentive, sometimes completely checked out. When Richard, my biological father, stopped paying child support, they couldn't handle it. They literally told me they couldn't afford me anymore, like I was a car payment they needed to eliminate from their budget. Each word felt like a knife. I'd always known my parents were emotionally distant, but this was beyond cold. This was cruel. The worst part wasn't even them giving me up. James continued. It was how they just erased me afterward. I tried contacting them a few times after I turned 18. Your mom blocked my number. Your dad told me he'd file a harassment claim if I called again. I'm so sorry, I whispered. Not your fault. His voice was flat. What happened after? With your adoptive family? James shrugged. They're fine. Normal people with normal problems. We moved around a lot because of my dad's job. They did their best. We kept talking for hours. James told me about his childhood in bits and pieces, never staying in one place long enough to make real friends, always feeling like an outsider. I told him about growing up alone in that big house with parents who were physically present but emotionally absent. The coffee shop was closing when we finally wrapped up. James seemed drained, and honestly, so was I. But something had fundamentally shifted between us. The anger in his eyes had softened. What now? I asked as we stood outside in the parking lot. I don't know, he admitted. I never thought past the reveal the truth part of my plan. We should stay in touch, I said. I mean, if you want to. You're the only brother I've got. He gave me a half smile. Yeah, okay. But I'm not coming back to classes here. I've already withdrawn, going back to Bridgewater to finish my associate's degree. We exchanged real phone numbers this time. As I watched him drive away, I felt both lighter and heavier at the same time. I had a brother, but I'd also lost any illusion that my parents were decent people. Over the next few weeks, James and I texted regularly. Nothing deep, just checking in. He sent memes. I complained about professors. Normal brother stuff, I guess, though I had no reference point for what normal brothers do. Meanwhile, I avoided going home, made excuses about midterms and study groups. My mom called twice, leaving cheery voicemails that made my skin crawl. How could she sound so normal, knowing what she'd done? James and I met up again in early November at a diner, halfway between our colleges. This time, the conversation flowed easier. We swapped stories about our childhoods, finding weird parallels in how we'd both been shaped by the same parents in different ways. Have you confronted them yet? James asked, poking at his pancakes. No, I admitted. I've been avoiding going home. You can't avoid them forever. I know. I stirred my coffee mindlessly. I just don't know what to say. Hey, so I found the brother you abandoned. What's up with that? James snorted. I'd pay to see their faces. That's when the idea started forming. What if we did it together? He looked up sharply. What? Confront them together. Both of us at the same time. They wouldn't be able to deny anything with both of us standing there. James was quiet for a long moment. That would destroy them. They deserve it, I said, surprising myself with the venom in my voice. Yeah, he agreed quietly. They do. We spent the next hour plotting. Thanksgiving was coming up. I told my parents I was coming home for the break. It would be the perfect opportunity. James would show up unexpectedly while we were having dinner. Maximum dramatic impact. The plan gave me something to focus on besides my anxiety about classes. For once, I felt like I had control over something in my life. James seemed energized by it too. Our texts became more frequent, more detailed, as we refined our approach. But as Thanksgiving got closer, James became increasingly erratic. Sometimes, he'd send me 20 texts in a row at 3:00 a.m., rambling about everything our parents had stolen from him. Other times, he'd go silent for days. Are you sure you're okay with this plan? I asked during one of our phone calls. More than okay, he replied, his voice tight. I've been waiting for this moment for years. Something in his tone worried me, but I pushed the feeling aside. This wasn't about me anymore. This was about justice for James. The Tuesday before Thanksgiving, I drove home with a knot in my stomach. My parents greeted me with their usual distracted affection. Dad patted my shoulder and asked generic questions about school before disappearing into his home office. Mom fussed about my weight and my haircut, then got busy preparing for Thursday's dinner. I spent Wednesday helping Mom with Thanksgiving prep, chopping vegetables and trying not to vomit every time she casually mentioned how nice it was to have the family together. The audacity of that phrase coming from her mouth made me want to scream. Thursday morning, I woke up to a text from James. Still on for today? Can't wait to see their faces. They're going to finally pay for what they did. The wording made me uneasy. I texted back, "Remember, we're just confronting them, making them acknowledge what happened." He didn't respond, which only increased my anxiety. By the time our relatives started arriving, my mom's sister and her husband, my dad's brother and his family, I was a nervous wreck. Not that anyone noticed. They were all too busy with the usual Thanksgiving chaos. Dinner was scheduled for 4 p.m. James and I had agreed he'd show up around 4:30 when everyone would be seated and eating. But 4:30 came and went with no sign of him. Then 5 highs. I kept checking my phone under the table, ignoring my aunt's questions about meeting any nice girls at college. At 5:45, I excused myself to the bathroom and called James. No answer. I texted, "Where are you? Everything okay?" 3 dots appeared then. "Change of plans, meet me at our parents' bank now." What? What are you doing? They're going to pay literally. I know how to access Dad's safety deposit box. All their emergency cash and Mom's jewelry is in there. My blood ran cold. James, that's theft. You'll go to jail. Not if we don't get caught. Meet me or don't. I'm doing this either way. I rushed back to the dining room, made some excuse about a friend having an emergency, and practically ran to my car. The bank was only 10 minutes away, but it felt like hours. When I pulled into the parking lot, James's car was there. The bank was closed for the holiday, but the ATM vestibule was open 24/7. I found James sitting on the floor of the vestibule, his back against the wall, head in his hands. "What happened?" I asked, crouching beside him. "Couldn't do it," he mumbled. "Got here and realized I don't actually have access to anything. Just got overwhelmed, thinking about everything. Relief washed over me so strong it almost buckled. My knees. Let's get out of here. We can figure out another way to confront them." We drove separately to a 24-hour diner nearby. James looked terrible. Dark circles under his eyes, hair a mess. He admitted he hadn't slept in days, too amped up about confronting our parents. "I think I need to step back from this," he said, staring into his coffee mug. "It's consuming me. All I think about is making them hurt like they hurt me." I nodded, relieved. Maybe confronting them isn't the answer. Then what is? There was genuine desperation in his voice. I don't know. Living well, being better than them, building our own relationship without them in it. James gave a hollow laugh. "You sound like my therapist." "You have a therapist?" "Had. Stopped going when I transferred to your school. Probably should go back." He rubbed his face. "I'm a mess, Tommy. Finding you, planning all this, it brought everything back up." We talked for hours, refilling our coffee mugs until the sympathetic waitress just brought us a whole pot. By the time we left, it was past midnight. The plan to confront our parents was shelved, at least for now. "I should get back," I said in the parking lot. "They're probably worried." "They won't be," James said flatly. "But yeah, you should. Go. I'm going to drive back to campus. Crash in my old room. My stuff's still there even though I withdrew." "Text me when you get there," I said. He nodded, and we awkwardly hugged goodbye. It was our first real hug, I realized. Despite everything, it felt right. When I got home, the house was quiet. Everyone had gone to bed or left. There was a note from my mom on the counter. "Hope your friend is okay. Leftovers in the fridge. Love, Mom." The casual normalcy of it made me furious all over again. I wanted to wake her up, confront her right then and there. But I remembered James's face at the bank. How close he'd come to doing something he couldn't take back. Maybe confrontation wasn't the answer for either of us. I went to bed, but couldn't sleep. Around 3 a.m., I realized James hadn't texted to confirm he'd made it back to campus. I sent him a quick, "You good?" art message and tried not to worry. By morning, he still hadn't responded. I made excuses to stay home while my parents went Black Friday shopping. I kept calling James, but my calls went straight to voicemail. After my 20th unanswered text, real panic set in. I remembered his state of mind the night before. The look in his eyes, the desperation. Something wasn't right. I drove to campus, breaking every speed limit. parked illegally right in front of his dorm. The security guard at the desk knew me from my visits before and waved me through without bothering to check ID. James's room was on the 3rd floor. I knocked, then pounded, then tried the handle. Locked. I was about to go find an RA when a sleepy-looking guy poked his head out of the room next door. "You looking for Blake?" he asked, using the name everyone on campus knew James by. "Yeah, have you seen him?" "Not since like Wednesday. He was acting weird though, all amped up. Said something about going to see his family for Thanksgiving." My stomach dropped. Did he say anything else about what he was planning? The guy shrugged. "Nah, he was pretty private. Oh, but he did give me this envelope yesterday. Said to give it to you if you came looking for him." He disappeared back into his room, returning a moment later with a sealed envelope. "Here." I ripped it open right there in the hall. Inside was a key and a note in James's messy handwriting. "Storage Unit 4117, secure all storage on Route 9, go alone, J." The guy was watching me curiously. "Everything okay, man?" "I hope so," I muttered, already heading for the stairs. The storage facility was only a 15-minute drive from campus. I found unit number 417 easily enough. It was in the back corner of the property, away from the main office. The key fit, but I hesitated before lifting the roll-up door. What would I find inside? James had been in such a dark place last night. I took a deep breath and pulled the door up. The unit was small, maybe 10 by 10, and it was packed with stuff. Furniture, boxes, toys, children's toys. I stepped inside, confused. There was a blue bicycle that looked vaguely familiar, a box labeled James Grade 2, in what looked like my mother's handwriting. With a jolt, I realized what I was looking at. These were James's things. The belongings my parents had supposedly put in storage when they erased him from our lives. They hadn't gotten rid of anything. They'd just hidden it all here. I opened one of the boxes. Inside were school projects, report cards, little league trophies. Another box contained clothing, small jeans and t-shirts, carefully folded. A third had photo albums. I sat cross-legged on the concrete floor and opened an album. There was James, maybe 4 or 5, sitting on our dad's shoulders, at what looked like a county fair. Another showed him opening Christmas presents in our living room, my mom hugging him on what must have been his birthday, a cake with 6 candles in front of them. They had looked so happy, so normal. How could they have given him up? I was so absorbed in the photos, I almost missed the folded piece of paper that had been placed on top of a box near the door. My name was written on the outside. My hands shook as I unfolded it. "Tommy," it began. "If you're reading this, I've probably done something stupid. I found this storage unit last month, followed Mom here one day when she came to drop off more of my old stuff. Can you believe they kept everything but still threw me away? I thought confronting them would help, make them sorry, make them hurt like I hurt. But seeing you last night made me realize they're never going to change. They're never going to be sorry enough, and I can't keep carrying this. I don't blame you. You didn't ask for any of this. You were just a baby when they made their choice. Thanks for being the brother I never got to have, even if it was just for a little while. Take care of yourself, James." Cold terror gripped me. The note read, like a goodbye, a final goodbye. I fumbled for my phone, dialed James again, straight to voicemail. I called the campus security office, asked if they could check his room again, break in if necessary. They promised to call me back. I was about to leave the storage unit when something caught my eye. A small box labeled important papers in the corner. I opened it and found James's original birth certificate, his adoptive parents' information, legal documents about the transfer of custody, and a life insurance policy my parents had taken out on James when he was born, for $250,000, with a suicide exclusion clause that expired after 18 years. The policy was set to mature when James turned 18, which made sense since they'd likely never expected to see him again. They had created a financial safety net from giving up their child. My phone rang, startling me. It was campus security. "We checked the room," the officer said. Your friend isn't there, but—" He paused. "There's some concerning stuff written on the walls. We've called the local police to do a wellness check. Do you have any idea where he might have gone?" I thought about the despair in James's eyes last night, the finality of his note. "I might," I said, remembering something James had mentioned during one of our conversations. "Try the old fire tower in Blackwood Forest. It's about 5 miles west of campus." I was already running to my car as I hung up. The fire tower had come up when we were swapping stories about places we went to be alone. James said he discovered it shortly after transferring to my college, said the height of it made his problems seem smaller. I drove like a maniac, calling 911 as I went, telling them to send someone to the tower immediately. The dispatcher tried to keep me on the line, but I hung up as I skidded into the small dirt parking area at the trailhead. The hike to the tower usually took 20 minutes. I did it in 10, lungs burning, branches whipping my face as I ran. When the rusty metal structure came into view through the trees, I saw a figure sitting at the top platform, legs dangling over the edge. "James!" I screamed, still running. "James, don't!" He looked down, surprised to see me. I couldn't make out his expression from this distance, but his body language was eerily calm. "Stay there!" I yelled, reaching the base of the tower. "I'm coming up!" I took the metal stairs 2 at a time, my hands gripping the cold railing so tight my knuckles went white. 5 flights up, the wind whipping stronger with each level. When I finally reached the top platform, I was gasping for breath. James was sitting with his back against one of the support posts, knees pulled up to his chest. He looked exhausted, but surprisingly calm. "How'd you find me?" he asked. "Your note," I panted, gesturing back towards the storage unit. He nodded slowly. "You weren't supposed to get that until later." "Well, I got it now." I took a cautious step toward him. "James, please come away from the edge." "I'm not going to jump if that's what you're worried about." He sounded almost offended. "I just come up here to think." Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by doubt. The note had certainly sounded final, and the campus security officer had mentioned concerning things written on his walls. "The police are on their way," I said, taking another step closer. "They're worried about you." "I'm worried about you." James sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I didn't mean to scare everyone. I just needed some space to think." He glanced at me. But I guess that's hard to believe after my meltdown last night. I sat down next to him, careful to keep some distance between us and the edge of the platform. "I found the life insurance policy," I said quietly. His jaw tightened. "Yeah, that was a fun discovery." "Did you know about it before you found the aita storage unit?" He shook his head. "Found it about a week ago. That's when that's when things got dark. Really dark." We sat in silence for a minute, the wind whistling through the metal framework of the tower. In the distance, I could hear sirens approaching. "What are you going to do now?" I asked. James looked out at the forest stretching below us. "Honestly, I don't know. Go back to therapy for starters." He gave a hollow laugh. "Beyond that, I just know I can't keep obsessing over them. It's killing me, Tommy. Literally killing me." The realization of how close I'd come to losing my brother, a brother I'd only just found, hit me hard. I reached out and put my hand on his shoulder. He tensed briefly, then relaxed. "Whatever you decide," I said. "I'm here. We're brothers. That doesn't change." For the first time that day, James smiled, a small, tired smile, but genuine. "Yeah," he said. "I guess we are." We heard people calling from below, police officers and paramedics making their way up the trail. James sighed, resigned to what was coming next. "They're going to make me go to the hospital, aren't they?" "Probably," I admitted, "but I'll be right there with you." As we made our way down the tower to meet the first responders, I realized something had fundamentally shifted between us. We'd started this journey as strangers with a shared past. Now, facing an uncertain future, we were something else entirely. We were family, the real kind. The next few days were pretty intense. James spent 2 nights in the psychiatric ward for observation. I visited both days, bringing him clean clothes and his favorite snacks from the vending machine. The hospital? Staff were nice enough, but the whole place had this weird smell that reminded me of elementary school cafeterias. I sat with him while a psychiatrist asked a bunch of questions about his ideation and plan. James was surprisingly honest about everything, finding the storage unit, discovering the life insurance policy, the spiral he'd been in. The doctor prescribed some anti-anxiety meds and made him promise to resume therapy once he got out. "Sorry for scaring you," James said on my second visit. We were sitting in the hospital's sad little courtyard, the only place patients could get fresh air. I wasn't actually going to do anything. "Your note seemed pretty final," I pointed out. He stared at his hands. I guess part of me was thinking about it, but mostly I just needed to get away from everyone and everything. When they finally discharged him, I drove James back to his dorm to pack up the rest of his stuff. The walls of his room were covered with scribbled notes and printed photos, a crazy person's investigation board, tracking our parents' movements and finances. No wonder campus security had freaked out. "This is embarrassing," James muttered as we took everything down. I went full conspiracy theorist. I didn't know what to say. The whole thing was disturbing, but I also got it. If I'd been abandoned and then discovered my parents had profited from it, I'd probably lose my mind a little too. James decided to move back in with his adoptive parents for a while. They lived about 2 hours away and had been freaking out since the hospital called them. I helped him load his car and promised a visit soon. We hugged goodbye in the parking lot, an awkward but genuine embrace. "What are you going to do about them?" he asked before getting in his car. Good question. I'd been avoiding my parents' calls and texts since Thanksgiving. They'd gone from concerned to annoyed to worried sick as the days passed. "I don't know yet," I admitted, "but I'll figure it out." After James left, I drove back to my dorm and finally called my mom. She answered on the first ring. "Tommy, where have you been? We've been so worried." Her voice made my stomach twist with anger. "I've been with James," I said flatly. Silence on the other end. Then, "I don't know who that is." "Yes, you do. You also knew him as Blake. And before that, as your son." Another long silence. "You need to come home," she finally said, her voice tight. "We need to discuss this in person." "No," I said. "I'm not coming home. You're going to tell me the truth right now." She hung up. I threw my phone across the room, barely missing my roommate who'd just walked in. He gave me a concerned look, but didn't ask questions. Just grabbed his textbook and left again. I appreciated that about him. My phone buzzed with a text from my dad. "Son, whatever you think you know, it's more complicated than that. Come home this weekend. We love you." That "we love you" made me even angrier. Where was that love when they were abandoning James? I spent the next few days in a fog, barely attending classes, just thinking about what to do. The semester was almost over anyway. Just 2 weeks of classes left before finals. I could skip going home for winter break, maybe crash with a friend instead, but that felt like running away. On Saturday morning, I woke up to someone pounding on my dorm room door. I stumbled out of bed, expecting my RA or maybe campus security again. Instead, I found my parents standing there, looking exhausted and out of place among the college students passing by in the hallway. "We need to talk," my dad said. I wanted to slam the door in their faces. Instead, I grabbed my coat and keys. "Not here. There's a diner down the street." We walked in uncomfortable silence, my parents trailing behind me like guilty children. The diner was nearly empty that early on a weekend. We took a booth in the back, and I ordered coffee just to have something to do with my hands. "How is he?" my mom asked once the waitress left. "James? He's okay. No thanks to you." My dad winced. "Tommy, we know you're angry. You have every right to be, but there are things you don't understand." "Then explain them to me," I said, my voice low and steady. "Explain how you could give up your own kid." Explain the life insurance policy. Explain the storage unit where you've been hiding all his stuff. My mom's eyes widened at the mention of the storage unit. How did you... James followed you there, I said. He found everything, including the policy. My parents exchanged a look that made me want to flip the table. It wasn't like that, my mom said quietly. The insurance was Richard's idea. In case something happened to James, there would be money for his future. Then, when things changed, Richard insisted we keep it active. And what, you just happened to collect when James turned 18? I pressed. My dad sighed. The policy matured. It converted to a cash value. It wasn't like we were hoping for anything bad to happen. But you still took the money, I said. We put it in a trust, my mom said quickly. For you, for college. That hit me like a punch to the gut. My college fund. The money that was paying for my education right now came from essentially selling my brother. I'm going to be sick, I muttered, pushing away my untouched coffee. Tommy, please. My mom reached across the table for my hand. I pulled away. We made a terrible mistake. We've regretted it every day since. Not enough to tell me I had a brother, I said. Not enough to try and find him. We weren't allowed to, my dad said. The adoption was closed. Richard made sure of that. But James found you, I pointed out. He's been looking for answers for years, and you shut him out completely. My mom's eyes filled with tears. We were ashamed and scared. We didn't know what to say to him. How about sorry? I snapped. That would have been a start. The conversation went in circles after that. My parents kept trying to justify their actions. They were young. They were struggling financially. Richard pressured them. They thought James would have a better life with a proper adoption. I wasn't buying any of it. I need some time, I said, finally standing up. I can't just forgive this overnight. We understand, my dad said, though he clearly didn't. Will you be coming home for Christmas? I couldn't believe he was asking about holiday plans after everything we just discussed. I don't know, I said honestly. Probably not. My mom started crying for real then. Part of me felt guilty, but a bigger part just felt numb. I left them sitting there in the diner and walked back to my dorm alone. That night, I called James and told him everything. They actually showed up at your dorm? He asked, sounding impressed despite himself. Didn't think they had it in them. Yeah, well, they still managed to make it all about themselves, I said. Classic mom and dad? James laughed, a genuine laugh that I hadn't heard from him before. So, what are you going to do now? I sighed, staring at my dorm room ceiling. Finish the semester, then figure out if I can transfer somewhere else for spring. I don't think I can keep taking their money. Don't be stupid, James said. Use their money. Get your degree. That's the least they owe you. He had a point, but the thought of being connected to them through financial strings made me uneasy. What about you? I asked. How's it going with your adoptive parents? Better than expected, he admitted. They've been really understanding about everything. My mom's been cooking all my favorite foods, and my dad keeps trying to get me to talk about my feelings. He paused. They want to meet you, by the way. Really? Yeah. They said you're welcome to spend Christmas with us if you want. No pressure, though. The offer caught me off guard. I'll think about it, I promised. Finals week passed in a blur of all-nighters and stress eating. I barely noticed Christmas approaching until my roommate started packing to go home. My parents had been texting daily, asking about my plans, but I'd kept my responses vague. I still didn't know what to do about them. The anger hadn't faded, but beneath it was this confusing tangle of feelings. They were still my parents. They'd raised me, supported me, been there for every milestone. But they'd also done something unforgivable to James. How was I supposed to reconcile those two realities? The day before winter break officially started, I got a text from James. Made you something. Check your email. I opened my email to find a video attachment. When I played it, it was footage from the storage unit. James had gone back and recorded everything inside, documenting each box, each childhood memento. He narrated in a surprisingly calm voice. This is a baseball trophy from when I was 7. Mom used to come to all my games. This is a birthday card from when I turned 6. Look, they all signed it. The video ended with James sitting cross-legged among the boxes, looking directly at the camera. I made this for you because I want you to understand something. It took me way too long to figure out. They loved me. They really did. They were just too selfish and scared to do the right thing when it got hard. That doesn't excuse what they did, but it helps me make sense of it. He paused. Anyway, thought you might want to see all this stuff. There's a whole history here neither of us knew about. I watched the video 3 times, oddly touched by James's gesture. It was like he was giving me pieces of our shared past that I'd never gotten to experience. I texted him back, "Thanks for this. Really, it helps." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then. So, Christmas at my place? I smiled despite everything. Yeah, I'd like that. The next few weeks were a weird blend of awkward and healing. I spent Christmas with James and his adoptive family, who turned out to be genuinely warm people. His mom made about 50 different cookies, and his dad took us ice fishing, which was honestly boring as hell, but still somehow nice. James and I exchanged gifts. I got him a vintage Nintendo that we ended up playing for hours. He gave me a framed photo he'd found in the storage unit of our dad holding both of us when I was a baby and he was about 7. We had the same crooked smile. "I don't know if I'll ever totally forgive them," James said one night as we sat on his parents' back porch, bundled up against the cold. "But I think I'm done letting them control how I feel." I nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. I told them I need space, that I'll talk to them when I'm ready. "And when will that be?" I shrugged. No idea, but not never, I guess. By the time I headed back to college for spring semester, something had shifted inside me. The anger was still there, but it didn't burn as hot. I spent more weekends visiting James than going home, but I did occasionally answer my parents' calls. They were trying in their imperfect way. My dad even asked if they could meet James again. Someday. I told them that would be up to him. As for me and James, we settled into being brothers, something neither of us had experience with, but we figured it out as we went. We texted almost daily, usually stupid memes or complaints about work and school. We celebrated his birthday together, at a dive bar halfway between our colleges. He helped me move into my first off-campus apartment. It wasn't perfect. James still had dark days where he'd go quiet, and I still wrestled with anxiety. Our parents continued to be complicated, figures in both our lives, but we had each other now, and somehow, that made all the difference. One night, about a year after everything went down, I was scrolling through old photos on my phone and found one from that first lunch when Blake James had randomly sat down across from me in the dining hall. I'd been so anxious, so confused, by this stranger who wouldn't stop talking to me. Little did I know he was my brother, or how much that single interaction would change both our lives. I sent the photo to James with the caption, "Ever wonder what would have happened if you'd picked a different awkward kid to terrorize that day?" He texted back almost immediately, "Nah, it was always going to be you." And weirdly enough, I think he was right.